In the previous video, I was trying to get you guys to combine the two definitions, one for the lines of lat long with the other one, which is the Earth's rotation. What I discovered as I walked around is that only a few people discovered and followed through on, because I think that was homework. You guys were supposed to finish up getting the angle of declination in. So I want to show you the component that allows you to get the angle of declination in. So the very first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to drop in a frame. Okay, so I'm going to set a point. Let me full screen this side of it. All right, I'm going to set a point out here somewhere. So I'll just drop a point somewhere out here. Okay. And onto that point, I am going to place a plane. All right, so actually, no, I'm sorry, it's not that. I'm going to drop a point down, and I'm going to set this as the point for that. And I'm going to feed that into this XY plane. I'm only doing that so it gets off of the big one over here. All right? So if we zoom in on this, we'll see which way the the Y-axis and the X-axis runs, and which way the Z-axis runs. Okay? So this is an object. All right? It's a piece of geometry. And so the component that you guys needed to use to get the angle of declination was rotate 3D. So the goal of it was to feed in this geometry and then figure out which axes to rotate on and how far to rotate. So for example, if I hover over the axes command, it has one locally defined value, and that value is 0, 0, 1. So what axis does that define? It defines the z-axis, right? So if right now I enter an angle into this thing, whether it's in radians or degrees, okay, it's going to spin on which way is this thing going to spin? It's going to spin on the z-axis like it's a top, right? So what do I do if I want it to spin on this axis or that axis? I have to define a vector, right? Because the axis requires, right, some form of vector. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put in a panel here. And in that panel, I'm going to actually define it for multi-line text, even though I don't need to. I'm going to define one value. I want to define a vector that runs along the y-axis. So if I assume that I'm starting at 0 and I want to define a vector that defines the y-axis, what's my next set of coordinates? Starting at 0. You guys back there be quiet, because you guys worked together and got this done. I want the rest of you to think about it. Okay, so Natalie says 0, 1, 0. Okay, very good. So that is going, if this is 0, 0, 0, right, and I go to 0, 1, 0, I'm going to go to that point right there, right? So I've just defined that as a vector. So if I take this and I feed it into the axes, right, it's going to spin on that axis. So let's observe what it does under both conditions. I'm going to disconnect this. All right, so now it goes back to 0, 0, 1. You all said that's the z-axis, right? Okay, so let's drop a number slider with 90 degrees in here. So 0, 90. And I'm going to drop in a radians to degrees converter. All right, so I'm going to take these degrees, I'm going to set this to 45 or something like that. All right, can you guys predict what's going to happen to that plane when I connect this to the angle? What do you guys say? What's it going to do? It's going to rotate which direction? So tell me what this is going to do. Let's see what axis it currently is taking. 0, 0, 1. That's the axis of spinning. So what's it going to do? Do you say it's going to spin this way, or around that way? You're saying around? Around. Okay, let's try it. See what happens. Radians to angle. Uh-oh. Oh. Oh, there it is over there. So it's taking it and it's spinning it around the world axes. Okay? So that didn't work. So let's try feeding this then and see what happens. And so now it has spun it this direction. But it's using the world axes, right, as the position that it's spinning it around. So the rotate 3D is not feeding from the center. So look what it says for center. Right? It's basically saying the world origin. So in order to fix that, what we're going to have to do is feed either that point or this plane into this geometry. So let's do that. Let's take okay. So now if I disconnect this, what's it going to do? It's rotating on the z-axis. It's rotating on the one that goes up and down. But as soon as I tell it to rotate on the y-axis, it spins on the green axis. All right, now let's try copying this panel and make it rotate on the x-axis. So how do I define a vector in the x-axis?
1, 0, 0.
All right, feed that in. Now it's rotating on that axis. Okay, so what I'd like you guys to do right now is I would like you guys to put 3 planes in, put 3 points in. So this is what I'm going to ask you all to do, just on a clean definition, nothing else in there. Put 3 points in Rhino, feed them into 3 points in Grasshopper, drop a plane on them, and use the rotate 3D, and I want them to rotate around wherever the plane is located, and I want you to rotate them in all 3 axes, Z, X, and Y. Okay? That should be fairly simple. You can create one, copy it. As long as you refeed the point to another point, you'll be set. Okay? So I'm going to go ahead and let you guys do that. I'm going to stop this one, do it myself, show it, and then keep going from there.